Okay, so I got these packages on eBay. I ordered a leather coat. I do prefer leather to vegan leather. I would only ever buy it secondhand, and then I feel like it's out there already. It's warmer, it's natural. So I do have like, ooh, really bad is happening in this package. I don't know what to do with this. I need you to see.
What is that? Why would that be a thing?
Oh, it is cute. You can get really cheap ones on eBay. Like this was only 16 pounds. Oh my god, it's so good. I've been looking for so long to find something with like a fur collar or like fur trim. Looking online, like it was really hard to find something with the trim that wasn't like super expensive. So what I did, oh, I'm so excited. It's a sheepskin. Oh my god, this is gonna be so good. Okay, it's a sheepskin rug, which again has been cleaned. The goal for this is to take this jacket and add my own trim, and I think these colors work so well together. I've wanted this jacket for so long, like this exact vibe with like an extreme cuff and like an extreme collar. I don't know if I want to make the collar like just here or if I want to bring it down. And like,
I mean, this is what I mean by the two different collars. Like I was thinking something like this or more of a shawl. Here are ones, so this is like the first one, which I actually really like that. And then I had this one, so it could really be either. They're both really cute. And then this one here.
I sort of wanted like a shawl like collar rather than just the like small collar. So I think I'm gonna do a shawl. I think it'll be cuter. Okay, so all I need to do, I'm gonna make a pattern out of fabric first. My cuff pattern and my collar pattern, lay it out on that, cut it, and then I'm done. Okay, yeah, so a huge thing online was how to clean them, and just because it is fur, I have this cat brush, and apparently, oh, like really works.
It's a little ratted like in that, and if I just use my cat hairbrush, it makes it nice and fluffy again. Like that's good, that looks good. Okay, I really like these two colors together.
Okay, so I think it always helps to have like an idea of the shape of the pattern. So to use pieces that we already have to stencil them out, like even this collar here, it would look like it's just lying flat. There's a lot of curve. So we're gonna be creating this curve to have our shawl. So we're gonna recreate this collar. Again, you can see like how much actual shape it has. It's important that we are gonna match that because the piece that we're putting on is gonna go right on top. So if you have some like scrap fabric, so we can start actually even with the cuffs. Taking the cuffs, I think I wanna do, okay, so we'll start with the cuff just by measuring out its circumference, and then you wanna add 2 centimeters. I like the look of them being a little thicker. I think I'm gonna do 12 centimeters, and then I'm gonna do the circumference of this sleeve 26, so I'm gonna do 28 because I wanna keep in mind that I'm doing seam allowance for this. So 28 centimeters, and it's good to write this down. 12 centimeters by 28 centimeters. 28 times, I literally already forgot. 28, was it 28? 28 centimeters. 26 plus seam allowance of 2 centimeters is 28. 12 centimeters for my cuffs. Yeah, okay, so it's 28 by 12 centimeters, and we're gonna do 2 of those. They're just gonna be full rectangles, so we're gonna just cut those, sew them together, right sides together, have the seam allowance, flip it right side out, and then hand stitch it. I think a huge thing when buying vintage jackets, I think a thing that can really put me off a lot are the buttons. And these buttons I actually think are really cute, but like I got a jacket once. It was so cute, and it had these like weird orange buttons that were not doing the jacket any favors. Changing buttons on a jacket can really change the look of the jacket. If they were like this, ooh, actually, the blue's kind of a vibe. Okay, wait, those are cute actually. Do I have enough of those? I don't. It actually is so easy to go and pick your own buttons.
Leather, they'll often have the outside button and then a button on the inside. This button here is just so the thread doesn't take a toll on the leather from like digging through the leather. Okay, so for this project, we're gonna need scissors, pins, hand sewing needle, fabric, pencil, measuring tape, thread, and then optional some buttons. Now with our cuff pattern measured out, we're gonna move on to the collar. We want to make sure that the collar's lying out super flat, and then we're just going to use pins or a pencil if your fabric's light enough to mark out the collar. It can also help to mark down where the center of the collar is. And now using our measuring tape, we're going to mark out the width of our collar. We want to make sure that we're not including the collar stand and just the top of the collar. And then we're going to place pins or mark with our pencil. We don't want to cut away too much of the fabric at this point, so we're just going to cut out a small hole for the neck.
Okay, so now we've got, as you can see, this is the collar, and it should align perfectly with the one that already exists. Also good that I didn't cut off too much. I think down the center, tuck this in, and that'll show what I would need. Because there's no lapel on the actual jacket, I don't know how it would lie if there was a collar underneath but then no lapel. Because with the sheep rug, it's so thick that I think things like that will sort of be not as obvious. This is actually, it looks good with the lapels, I think. Okay, and you can see that was pretty easy to do, and like with this now too, it's going to be an easy pattern to cut out because we have it entirely done. We know how it fits. Like there'll be some adjustments, like you want to make sure that it's going to be symmetrical, and because I'm cutting on both ends, like you can't really trust that. This would also take away a button, which is like not really a problem. Okay. I like this one better. I don't know what's happening with this one. So I'm just going to cut it and then I'll fold it in half. I'm liking this. I'm into this. And I'm just going to cut it. Okay, so now I have this bit and I can use its symmetrical half to cut it. Okay.
So now folding your fabric in half at the center seam that we marked, we're just going to cut the second half of our shawl to make sure that the two sides are equal. We can also now use our cuff measurements to cut that pattern piece as well. With our two pattern pieces now done, we can move on to cutting it out of our real fabric. When you're cutting pattern pieces out of fur, you want to take into account the direction the fur is going. So for my shawl collar, I wanted the fur facing down, and it was the same for the cuffs. So placing the pattern pieces on, I just wanted to make sure that everything was going in the right direction. And to make sure that there was enough space for all my pattern pieces. And then flipping your fabric fur side down, you're going to pin your piece on the back of the fabric. Again, making sure that there's enough space for all my pieces, and then I'm going to start by cutting out the shawl. I gave the shawl a little brush, and then I moved on to cutting out my two cuffs. When cutting these pieces out, you want to do tiny cuts with your scissors to avoid cutting too much of the fur. Once we're done cutting the cuffs, to prep them for sewing, we're going to cut away 1 centimeter of the fur on either side to trim down some of the bulk. And this will make it easier for when we're sewing them together. We're going to do this for both cuffs, and then we're going to place them right sides together and sew them with our machine. You can also do this by hand if you don't have a strong enough machine. So now with our two cuffs finished, we're going to hand stitch them onto our sleeves. I used a thimble, which was pretty important because the leather is a pretty tough material to poke the needle through. For a stronger stitch, I'm sewing with 2 layers of thread, so I just tied my 2 ends together. Then placing the pieces right sides together with the first side facing up, I measured the placement of my cuff. I wanted to make sure it was placed so it would slightly hang over the edge of the sleeve. And then with my hand sewing needle, I just stitched it on, making sure to continue to measure that it was in the right place throughout the process. And then I'm going to sew all along the cuff. And then once you're done, you can flip your cuff back down. The second stitch for the cuff is just to attach the bottom of the sleeve, which again we're going to do with our hand sewing needle. I ended up putting on a rubber glove because it made it a lot easier to grab the needle. We're then going to do that exact process for both of the cuffs. We're now ready to attach the collar, so we're going to start by placing it on our jacket and then removing any of the buttons that it might be covering.
So I'm going to do a zigzag stitch with my machine to kind of lock this in. And I'm going to do that from the tip of this, so you fold it open.
there's a little gap here between the collar and the jacket. There's a lot of leeway with this fabric because it's so bulky and a lot of the seams are covered by the wool. So I think it'll be totally fine just attaching this on top, and I'm gonna do how I did with the sleeves along the edge of the collar. So I'm gonna just sew here up to this. So sewing to here, sewing to here, attaching this, and then as you can see there's that little triangle gap here, and then I'm gonna, with my machine, because this is less fabric to go do. I mean, I hope it works with the machine. If not, I can do this by hand too, but then I'm just gonna do zigzag, zigzag all the way down, and it will be attached. So again, with our hand sewing needle, we're just gonna attach the shawl part to the collar, and I'm just sewing it right where the collar hits the collar stand, just right in between that seam. And as you can see, because of the fur, it's really hard to even see the stitches. So you're going to continue sewing your shawl all the way to the edge of the collar. And now with our shawl fully attached to the collar, we can now attach it to the front of our jacket with the zigzag stitch using our machine. So you're just going to place right sides together and stitch it with a wide zigzag stitch. Because the 2 layers of fabric are so thick, you may need to move your pieces around a bit. And we're going to do the same for the other side. As you can see, that little triangle gap is mostly hidden by the fur, but we're going to do an extra stitch on the tip of the collar to help tuck it more underneath. So flipping the collar up, you're going to mark down the placement of where you're going to attach it at the tip. And then with your hand sewing needle, you're just going to sew a couple of stitches. And then you're going to do that for the other side as well. We now have our collar and our cuffs attached, and the final step is optional, which is shortening the jacket. So we want to measure the facing of the hem, and then we're going to add 1 centimeter to that measurement and subtract that from how much we want to remove from the hem. And then using our measuring tape, we're going to continue to cut that measurement all along the hem. We're then going to fold up our hem, including the 1 centimeter seam allowance, and mark that with a pin. And then place a pin 1 centimeter below that, and you'll see the overlap of seam allowance. We're then going to cut up to where we placed our lower pin. And then for the lining, you always want to leave an extra centimeter, so you're going to cut it 1 centimeter below that pin, making sure you're only cutting the inside layer of the fabric. If your jacket has a seam, you can also unstitch that piece and remove it. You then want to flip up your hem, placing right sides together, and you're going to place pins to keep it in place. And you're going to continue pinning while also attaching the facing to the lining. You want to make sure that you're going to leave a gap in the middle so you can flip your jacket right side out when you're done sewing. So now with your machine, stitch where you placed your pins. You're then going to flip your jacket right side out through the hole that you left open, making sure to poke out your corners. You're then going to hand stitch the gap that you left open. For a crisper finish on your hem, you can either stitch it down with your machine or place something heavy to flatten the leather. And you're all done! Thank you for watching, and if you liked the video, please subscribe.